Achievements of the early nationalists. 12. Mention any 4 achievements of the early nationalists. 4 achievements of the early nationalists are dash. 1. They aroused the feeling of one nation. 2. They trained Indians in the art of political work. 3. They exposed the true nature of the British rule in India. 4. The efforts of the early nationalists led to the following reforms. The appointment of a public service commission in 1886. A resolution of the House of Commons, 1893, to conduct the Icse examination simultaneously in India and in London. Appointment of the Welby Commission on Indian Expenditure. The Indian Council Act of 1892 was passed to reform the Legislative Council. These achievements of the early nationalists served as a base for the national movement in later years. Criticism of the early nationalists. 13. Mention any 2 shortcomings of the early nationalists. 2. Or, what were the reasons for the partial failure of their methods? 2 shortcomings of the early nationalists are dash. 1. British was using India's resources to increase its wealth, and they failed to realize that the interests of the British and Indians clashed with each other. 2. They failed to draw the masses into the mainstream of the national movement. They mainly had influenced the urban educated Indians like professional groups such as lawyers, doctors, journalists and teachers. Methods of the early nationalists. 14. What were the 2 methods adopted by the early nationalists in the freedom struggle? 2. Or, mention any 4 methods adopted by the early nationalists. 4. Or, mention the nature of the methods of the early nationalists. 4. They believed in the legal framework, and slow orderly political progress. This method followed by them was popularly known as constitutional agitation method. They relied on constitutional and peaceful methods to achieve their aims. They believed in patience and reconciliation rather than in violence and confrontation. The methods adopted by the early nationalists had 2 objectives dash. 15. Mention the objective of the first set of methods adopted by the early nationalists. Or, 1. Mention any 4 first set of methods adopted by the early nationalists. 4 first set of methods dash. Objective: it was to arouse national political consciousness, to create an united public option and to educate the Indians in modern politics. For this purpose, they relied on the following methods dash. 1. They sent memorandums and petitions to the British government officials and the British Parliament. 2. The real aim of the petitions was to educate the Indians, though they were addressed to the government as they were carefully drafted with facts and arguments. 3. Delegations were sent to England. 4. They made use of the press to criticize government policies. 5. Resolutions of popular demands were passed. 6. Meetings in towns, cities and countryside were held.